Irina. Thank you again for hosting this series. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Jeannie. Thank you, Irina.
I'm excited to talk to you today. This is a little bit of a different chat than the ones that I've been having, because you and I have been working on Blue Beauty for a few years now, and you've helped tell Beauty Heroes Blue Beauty story. And so we're really close. A lot of the people that I've been speaking with on this series, I don't know that well, and you I know really well. So I'm really excited to have a very rich conversation with you this morning, share your wisdom. I feel like these conversations are helping me grow as the founder of Beauty Heroes. And I've learned so much just in every conversation, and I feel like they really are pushing us collectively forward in a really more mindful direction in our businesses. And you prepared a lot to share with us today. So I want to just introduce Rachel. For those who don't know her, she's the founder of Oyl Water, which is a creative design, content, and strategy firm based in Florida. Oyl Water has worked with Beauty Heroes for over 5 years, I think. And we really enjoy storytelling. We've told a lot of stories together, and you've told a lot of stories for other companies, with other companies. And I think you really are the best in this space. And you push me to tell our stories and to look for and to craft better stories. So I just really thank you for that. And I'm really excited to jump in. So we named this session Speaking the Truth, and how to tell your Blue Beauty story. And I think when you and I were originally talking about this session, you were really feeling like there is an opportunity to go deeper, and there is a need to tell your story truthfully. And I want to kind of get into what that means today. And so let's just start in the beginning. When you're looking at brands, and how do you tell the difference between, how do you look at you talk to a lot of companies and you take in a lot of information. How do you tell the difference between sort of a blue beauty brand, or a brand that's striving to go blue, and one that's a traditional beauty brand?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, Jeannie. I'll start by saying that I have loved being a part of this Blue Beauty movement and seeing how many brands over the last 2 years since you launched Project Blue Beauty have started to really use the tenets of Project Blue Beauty to build their own beauty brand. It's a very powerful thing. It's a powerful movement, and I'm so grateful to you and so proud to be a part of it. And over the last few years, I've really seen brands, come to us, whether they are pre-launch or they are already in the market and they're wanting to evolve their brand to become, bluer. I'm looking for a few things, or I'm seeing a few things. First and foremost, we have to understand that there's always going to be a consumer base and brand founders that are really still kind of trapped in the conventional model, where they're not really looking at ingredient integrity. They're not really looking at packaging integrity. They're really just looking at products and beauty products for problem, solution, benefits, right? They're not understanding necessarily that there is a direct correlation to environmental impact by just being a brand. So that consumer and that brand is generally not one that we work with, and not one that, it's really not an audience that I find most of our brands are talking to. And I think you probably would agree with Beauty Heroes. Then we have where I feel like the vast majority of the clean indie beauty brands are, and that's really in sort of the green space. They're certainly focused on results. They're focused on, talking about their botanical ingredients, clean science. They want to lean into greater transparency. They're definitely talking about packaging, the recyclability factor. They care, and they understand that their consumer cares. and they're wanting to tweak their messaging to align more with these environmental values, never at the expense, of course, of speaking to the results of the product, okay? And I think this is where the vast majority of the brands are today, and it's great. We should celebrate that. 20 years ago, brands weren't here.
Yeah.
Then there are blue beauty brands, and the ones that are really pushing for progress and innovation. These are brands that recognize the inextricable link between their process of ingredient sourcing, of production, how are they acquiring the raw materials. They understand that process directly impacts the potency and the efficacy of the finished product. That there is an inextricable link. If you are gentle with the earth, if you are doing it in a really sustainable, ethical way, a slower way, you're going to see that that the integrity of the ingredients it remains intact. That equals an impact on the planet. They understand that every step along the way has an impact on the planet. And they also see an opportunity to run a very profitable company while being mindful of all of these things. So in my world, I kind of have a little internal formula for our blue beauty brands where we are messaging on our 5 Ps, our process, our potency, our packaging, the planet, and profitability. And the profitability piece is huge, and we're going to talk about that today. Because I think gone are the days of thinking that you have to sacrifice profitability for environmental responsibility. So, and we have a lot of brands, and there are a lot of brands in the world that we don't work with who have proven that. So, to answer that question, there's definitely a range. And when we're talking with our clients in the very beginning, we're sort of trying to suss out where are they on that path. I will know that it is what I think is important for any listener of this is that the blue beauty or the blue model is not ultimately a marketing model. It's a business model. The marketing comes after that. And I think that's really important that it doesn't begin with marketing.
Yeah, I think this conversation really sets up next week's conversation really well with Prima and the founder, Christopher Gavigan, co-founder of Prima, and how they sort of started from the very beginning as a business strategy. And so, I think there's a couple things probably that you're seeing. You're seeing brands who've been in business for a while, really maybe even having a lot of this in place, but haven't articulated it.
Yes.
Haven't shared it in a way that was meaningful. And then new brands that are emerging and wanting to say, hey, we really want to build this into our business plan and into our community, and we want to lead with this because, we are making all this effort into starting our company with, a lot of the tenets of Blue Beauty and making a lot of the effort. So how important is it to actually talk about it rather than just do it?
Yeah. So it's funny. I definitely get people and clients who say, do they care? Like, do customers really care? This is, I think, the first point at which marketing and business planning and business strategy kind of intersect, and it's understanding your target audience. Like I said in the beginning, there's always going to be a base of people who don't care, and that's okay. We're not talking to them, or we're going to keep beating our drum, and maybe they will come on board one day. That's the hope, right? There is a huge audience, and really it is generationally, it crosses all generations. We see it in the Gen Zs, and they are probably the most sort of activist right now, but all the way up to boomers, we are seeing that there is a deep care and concern for purchasing, environmentally responsible products, and that's the ingredients, the packaging, the end-of-life cycle, all of it, and they want to purchase from companies that share their values. So the first thing is really understanding your customer base, and it is a deep dive into the psychographics, the customer buying behavior, what's driving that customer's purchases. We know enough now to know that the customer will spend a little bit more for and on products and brands that share their values. And that means a lot to brands that are formulating with integrity, because usually there's a little bit more expense involved. So once you understand your customer, and I think brands really getting behind the idea and the knowledge that you're not going to appeal to everybody with a really progressive blue brand, and that's okay. There is enough of an audience to support a very successful, profitable business. And with any sea change, it starts with a small, passionate group of people before it becomes, it hits critical mass. We have to keep doing this work, and we will continue to see the audience grow. We've seen the audience grow just since Beauty Heroes launched, since Oyl Water launched, right? And I think that 2020 is a cataclysmic year for change. So, yes, we need to keep speaking and beating the drum. We need to understand who we're speaking to, keep speaking to that person, using that language, and not worrying so much about the people who aren't listening, because there are enough of those who are. And then I want to say, we talk a lot in our world, especially too, because we're designers as well. We're content creators and designers. Design is very, very important. Very important. And certainly when we talk about innovation in design, packaging, materials, that's a big, huge topic, and we can get into it. But in terms of telling your blue beauty story, digital first brands, and I would say in 2020, any brand that's wanting to succeed, because digital is where it's all happening, they are powered by words. That shelf impression is not as powerful online as it is in retail. And there's absolutely a need for beautiful packaging and smart, sustainable packaging. But in terms of telling your story, digital first brands have to commit to very smart, strategic content creation and a messaging strategy, from hashtags to your headlines to how are you optimizing your content for, obviously, for SEO. That is how people are finding your brand: search words, keywords. So content has never been more important. So when those things dovetail, the importance of content for especially for digital first brands, and understanding your consumer, we start to see the real necessity for crafting a really intentional, authentic blue beauty story, so that your audience says, they share my values.
Yeah, and I would just add to that I feel like there's so much, just as a consumer, as a retailer, I'm always thinking about, there's so many touch points, right, that we have with our customer as a company, right? Like, we're sending them product. So we have this opportunity to touch them. They're going to open it. They're going to feel how something's packed. They're going to feel, you have an opportunity to communicate to them once they do purchase your products, and really reinforce that story. And there are words. I mean, we work on, everything from, like how we close our box. We work on this together, you and I, how that customer is going to feel when they're touching those products. And I feel like, my personal opinion is that you can feel a company's intention when they deliver something to you.
Sure. Yeah. And
that sort of experience of feeling like, wow, this company really cares. They're not just giving me lip service. Because that happens a lot too, where you order something from a company who says, like, we really care about the environment, and then everything comes in bubble wrap, and it's like, you're like, well, not so much, right? So that blue beauty story needs to sort of be felt. I think that's an opportunity that's important too.
Yeah, and I mean, Beauty Heroes is a digital first brand, right? I mean, it all starts on with a subscription and an online experience, and then of course the loyalty, the brand loyalty, I can't live without this brand exists because when they get that box, obviously the products that you curate, but then how you deliver it is so intentional. And So there's the first moment of awareness that generally happens online or on social, but that second moment of truth, the one that really lands the customer loyalty, is in that felt experience. And, you know, they are picking up and they're reading the words, but they probably read the words that meant the most to them first online, right? Mm-hmm. And now they want to feel and they want to, you know, so it all goes together. And I think the most important, you know, the most successful Blue Beauty story and narrative is one that weaves its way through every touch point, both visually and, you know, through the content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So greenwashing has been a thing for a long time. I feel like, you know, people ask me, you know, about greenwashing, and I just say it's just gotten worse, not better, unfortunately. And I just forwarded you an article that was in the Huffington Post this morning about companies that are, making claims that their companies are making efforts and initiatives to tackle climate change. And are those claims really real? And how to sort of know if a company is really telling the truth or if they're just kind of giving it lip service. So it was a main article in the Huffington Post this morning, which, so blue washing, like that's kind of like macro level blue washing. I think they're talking about huge companies like Amazon and, you know, I don't know, all kinds of big companies who are making big climate claims because, you know, we all need to work together. I think it's cool that companies are, you know, that this is actually a thing where companies are really making claims and initiatives in tackling their own carbon footprints, because the regulations aren't there. Certainly in America, there are no regulations. So, but in a more micro level, when, you know, do you think that sort of this blue washing is rampant? How do you define it? How do you spot it?
Yeah. Gosh, that article was so timely today. And I think you're right. I mean, I think that first and foremost, we do need to, I need to, for my own sanity and ability to live on this planet, I have to come from the place of like, let's celebrate the good. Let's celebrate these massive companies like Amazon and IKEA and Target and H&M who are saying we are going to be carbon neutral by 2050. You know, it's like, okay, great. First of all, thanks for bringing that conversation to the forefront. Mm-hmm. Thanks for making such a bold claim on your website for the entire world to see and hold you accountable to. And now as consumers and other business leaders, we need to hold them accountable. So I say, let's celebrate it. Sure, maybe we're a little skeptical, but let's assume the best and let's fight for the best and let's hold our feet to the fire. In our world of beauty, I think some of the same principles apply. I mean, look, we see greenwashing all the time, blue washing. I don't think it's intentional most of the time. I think this comes from you know, a desire to be moving in the right direction and not having maybe the knowledge or the language to educate and to articulate what's true for the brand. And that's why we started by saying, like, this is a business model before it's a marketing plan. Mm-hmm. So I want to say, I think that greenwashing and blue washing happens a lot of times unintentionally, but it is important that we, as you know, fellow colleagues and consumers and brands and founders and everybody who's playing in this space, that we do hold each other accountable compassionately, you know, assuming that they're doing the best that they can, but also saying, hey, that's not quite right. I think that a couple of things can help us in that. One is we all need to assume responsibility for the language that we're using in our brands. It's really not cool to be hyperbolic when we're talking about sustainability, regenerative, anything. You know, these are big words that have huge consequences and huge meaning and huge impact. So to use words like traceability and sustainability and regenerative, practices kind of cavalierly, I think it's quite irresponsible. We need to hold our fellow colleagues and brands accountable to that. I think that the industry would do well with a lexicon and a definition for these keywords that we're using and what they really mean and what they mean for the brand. And we can kind of dive into a few of them. I think traceability is like a really gnarly one. I think a few things happen with greenwashing. One is, or blue washing, both. Oftentimes it's too vague, right? Like that's how I spot it when I'm looking at it. It's so vague. It's saying things like, our products protect the earth. You know, what does that mean? You know, sometimes I think brands do that because they don't know how to explain it, or maybe they think that's enough and that the customer is going to be okay with that. I think another thing that happens is just misleading use of terminology. And I think this happens a lot. Let's get really specific about when we use the word sustainability. I feel like sustainability is being used the way organic is. Like, what does that mean? Can you talk about the process? What does that mean? Regenerative practices. Zero waste is even one that I scratch my head at and I say, okay, so your final packaging is biodegradable, or your final packaging kind of disappears with end of use, you know, like the wax or whatever, biodegradable. But what happens during the process of creating that packaging? Is it truly zero waste the whole way through? Was there no pollution created? Was there no damage done? That's a hard sell for me. I think that we need to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think zero waste, I think is so, I haven't thought about that. I saw that in your notes, and I was thinking, for me, I would be so thrilled. I think about my, I have a friend, I have a friend who is not really super interested in in zero waste living or, really being super environmentally conscious. She is if it's convenient.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of consumers like that. And I think that if you can, on one hand, I do believe that consumers, women are making most of the decisions for what goes into the household, what even, their kids are using for personal care, and, their kids are using on their skin. And, if we're talking about beauty and teaching, sort of this industry, I do think that, zero waste is actually something that people can understand, like, oh, wow, this is a zero waste product. It's good, but it also helps me be a better consumer. And I think for a lot of consumers, they want it to be, they're never going to think about all the way. But what I think is interesting, that you're right, these terms are really important. And I think it's really interesting that you want to sort of create this lexicon for the beauty space to help us really tell the truth. I mean, in some ways, like, do you think that this marketing, zero waste, like, there's nothing, everything creates waste. And, we work with I think we did a Blue Beauty story with Meow Meow Tweet, where they're like one of the brands that most embraces zero waste packaging and was really an early adopter for it. And she doesn't use the word zero waste because of what you're saying. She wants to tell the truth. Yeah. And
right.
So
listen, and I think customers, I think you're right. I think that there's, I would say the vast majority of customers are going to see zero waste packaging. They're going to say, this company's doing something great. I feel really good about it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to support them. And that's it. And they're not going to dig in further. And that's okay too. I don't think that companies should put the onus on the customer to make sense of all of this. It is the company's job. And I'm talking about the deep granularity of being a blue business, right? Where if we really want to keep pushing forward and going down this path, we do have to be more specific, and we have to use our words really wisely. So in the case of this zero waste packaging, like we were just talking about, a low impact packaging would be a way to phrase that, or a zero waste at end of life, or even better yet, let's start adding to our labels and our packaging what to do with this product end of life. And you can say biodegradable, and you can tell that story right there. That way you're not saying no waste was created, no impact on the planet was had in the making of this packaging. You're not making that claim. You're just saying at the end of its life, this will go back into the earth. And I think that's a lot more clear and direct and honest, and it opens up for a bigger conversation. And I think that's where Blue Beauty is headed, is let's have these bigger conversations.
Yeah, what other terms do you think need better definition? I mean, like you said, we're sort of having the same thing, right? Like every time I hear like, oh, we make natural products, it's like a big eye roll for me.
Yeah.
And, our products are all made sustainably. Again, sort of that's not enough. But what are some of the terms that, since, we have a lot of people tuning in from beauty brands that, what terms are you seeing? What terms do you feel, if you're going to say that, you need to back it up, or you can define it as that?
Totally. Yeah. I think a big one for me is transparency. And it's just because I've kind of gone down this rabbit hole and said, well, let's unpack this. So I think like, if you say that you are, fully transparent, radical transparency, what that would mean really is that you would understand the conditions of the soil and communicate this, right? This would be communicated to the customer. The harvesting process, what was used, how was it harvested, the processing of the ingredients so that we understand the environmental impact, the carbon footprint of that process, the manufacturing, the packaging and the shipping to the warehouse. Then once it gets into and the shipping to the consumer, once it gets into the consumer's hands, the end of life cycle, the impact that it has on the environment when the product is finally disposed of, how much CO2 is created in making the product, and how is the company, accounting for that. This would take like a team of PhDs to account for every brand. We're not there yet. But I think that we need to be really mindful about using the word transparency and drill down and say, well, what are we really being transparent about? And do we even know, as brand founders, all of those details that I just mentioned? Most people don't. Most people don't know their true carbon footprint. And I think the real accounting would be for every product sold, for every dollar in sales, there is a comparable accounting for the price that it took to make it. And not just the cost of goods. That's where we're at right now. What is the planetary cost? There are companies, there are people, there are thought leaders who are working towards this. And we can look at them as leaders outside of the beauty industry and glean from them and say, how can we adopt this in the world of beauty? And that's what I think the Blue Beauty movement is
doing. I think that's what you're working on. Is that correct?
I'm working on it with a client outside of the beauty space. And I would say that, Jeannie, you and I have been working on this. I mean, it's a long road. I think it's like life's work, right? But I think it starts by having these conversations, asking these questions, and really not being afraid to drill down and go, what does that mean? What can you explain that further? Right? So, at the end of the day, I think that that transparency, that word is one that I think we need to be really mindful of. Sustainability, kind of the same thing. It's like, can we go back and look at the process and let's account for these critical, moments, these critical inflection moments of what it takes to go from an idea to a product, and where along the way has the brand and the founder practiced like real true sustainability.
I see a lot of decks or a lot of brands come through, and it's so interesting that they're making really strong sustainability claims, and then you go to their ingredient lists and they're not embracing organic ingredients at all. And it's always, I mean, for me, that's just been really confusing. I'll just say, for beauty brands, if you're going to make a sustainability claim, but you're not really embracing, organics, not hard to, in any way. Like, it's kind of amazing to me how often I see that. And I don't know, I mean, so sustainability, transparency, traceability.
Yeah, traceability is another one. I mean, gosh, I mean, there are brands, and we work with brands that, they do the work. They get on the plane, they go to the farms, they go to where the products are being manufactured, they go and they meet all of their suppliers, and they have a true personal accounting for the traceability of their ingredients. I think it's a lot harder with packaging. I think packaging is a huge abyss right now. We have to trust a lot. We have to trust that what our suppliers are telling us is true.
Things made in China. I mean, it's just a reality, right? So you're not going to China to trace their packaging.
Yeah, you're not. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns about working with China is, I've read a ton about China's push towards, cleaning up their environment, and companies that are putting in very strict sustainability standards. And that gives me hope, because I'm an optimist. But you have to trust them. And that's where it gets really hard, because there's no regulation around that. So China's a tricky one. And I think, we do work with some vendors who produce their glass and their bioresins out of Europe. And that gives me a little bit more comfort when I'm working with the client on that. But look, everybody knows that packaging is probably the stickiest wicket here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't have a silver bullet, because for everything that we think we're doing right, there's sort of a trade-off, and we're all contending with it. So I would say on the Blue Beauty path, we really need to celebrate what strides we're making, and then be really honest about what we still have to do. I think customers love that. I think customers find a deep sense of relationship in that, because they're saying, okay, look, they know they're not perfect, and they're making headway, and they'll let us know when they've found some innovative thing, but right now they're doing the best they can. So I think that can all be communicated through a brand. I think it can be communicated on website, even on packaging. I'm looking at different labels outside of the beauty industry for how to communicate these transparency metrics, right? CO2 emissions, chemicals and ingredients that may not be so great, calling them out, saying, we're in the process of moving this out of our products. We're not there yet. Here's what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Give consumers the power to make the choice for themselves, but don't smoke and mirrors it, because that's the greenwashing that we all have to protect our industry from, and protect ourselves as consumers from.
So who's doing that well in the beauty space?
Yeah, luckily, I think there are a number of brands that are really walking their talk. First, I want to say Laurel Schaefer of Laurel Skin is one that, I think that she knows instinctively and intrinsically, before any of this was sort of, before we gave language to this, she was doing this way. I think she has a very, very deep relationship with the land, and with soil, and with her farmers, and with ingredient sourcing. And I think this is just her, her calling, and she's always done it this way. So I think she's been blue before blue was a thing. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about a new brand that just emerged. It's called Biophile. You know them, Jeannie. And what I love about Biophile is that they're really, first of all, they're approaching skincare, and they're approaching formulation from a totally new perspective through biofermentation, using, plant materials in a fermentation process, and using the broth or the brew that's kind of created from that as the base for their formulas. So nothing is wasted in that process. And that's so to me, that's a very strong zero waste story, or low waste story, because everything that they're using, they're baking that into the final formula. They also have a strong packaging story. So they're one that I think is really leading.
I wish I had some of their products right here, but you can go to anybody who's watching this.
I do.
File.
I have.
Yeah. Do you have a glass? Do you have it inside?
Yeah, this is not a plug, by the way. This just happened to be sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
So it's a very pharmaceutical grade glass. Yeah. And look, the owners of this brand will say, like, we're still struggling with, the caps, because every brand struggles with caps. But they're honest about it and they talk about it. But I think they have a really strong story. I think they're able to use some of this terminology in a really authentic way. There are brands like Pure Mana is a great example out of Hawaii. They're a small brand doing it the right way, and it takes a long time to do it the right way, but it is felt in their products. When you look at some bigger brands that have been, made it more mass or more mainstream, I want to point out the way that some of these brands are telling their story. Kevin Murphy is a hair care line, has a very thoughtful accounting for their consumption of water, their consumption of raw materials, and they use ocean plastic for all of their packaging, and they speak to and give really smart accounting for how, by using one product, how many gallons of plastic they're pulling out of the ocean, how many gallons of plastic they're kind of saving the planet from. I think it's really smart marketing. I really appreciate it, and it gave me a lot to kind of consume and read. Love Beauty and Planet is it's a Unilever brand, and it's in Target, but they have a really beautiful accounting for some of these bigger concepts, carbon footprint, their end of life cycle plan for their products. So I do think it's important to show that some of these mass brands and these brands that are in the mass retailers are also having this conversation. This isn't just an indie conversation. And then certainly it's in all of these other industries, fashion and retail. Stella McCartney is probably a really good example of who has really kind of put her stake in the ground in the fashion world around really talking about regenerative design and how she's implementing that as a business practice in her business. Jeannie, to the point that you brought up this morning with the article, we're looking at companies like IKEA and Target and Levi's and, that are making really big statements about their commitments for carbon offsetting by, say, 2020 or 2030, 2050. I think that the question that we all have to ask ourselves is what is our process for holding them accountable, and how do we know? How do we know? Sure. So we can point to these big companies, and I think the question will still remain, okay, good, I'm hopeful, and let's see what you do.
Great. We have just a little bit of time left, and I want to kind of dive into your least favorite topic ever, which is Black Friday, and sort of the patterns of consumption and how that plays into Blue being a Blue Beauty brand and how you interact with that. Beauty Heroes has definitely struggled with that. The struggle is real. The world's struggling with it. Definitely, if you have to, if you're in any business right now, for the last 3 months, I've gotten at least 20 emails a day about different webinars addressing Black Friday this year and how it's different, how it's changing, and it is changing. But we all agree that we need to use less, buy less, consume less. How do you think we get consumers and companies to buy into this when we've got things like Prime Day, Black Friday, Black November? It seems like every day. Yeah. So what, you know, how do you see it? I know you have a very unique perspective on it. Yeah, and the world's changing right now, actually. I feel like consumer behavior is changing. So what do you think about it? And what are you are you working on anything interesting around Black Friday that speaks to this?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're right that this is in some ways my least favorite topic because, you know, like many people probably, I've in previous years kind of gone along with creating campaigns for Black Friday and you know, giving my services and our services to this campaign and this time and the year against my consciousness. And I feel like or conscience, and I feel like we're now
because it's so true. Like it's so true. Like
true. And I mean, look,
with Black Friday, she's like, I don't want to. Don't make me.
I really was like, I'm gonna create like an anti-Black Friday campaign for Oyl and Water and just put it out and then just see what happens. Maybe
I think any brand wants to create an anti-Black Friday campaign, they need to work with you on it because I think it would come out really powerful.
Yeah. My general feeling about it, though, and I say this with compassion, obviously, because I know we're living in a capitalist consumer society. That's where we are. But I think we all know that we also are having a consumption crisis, and Black Friday is the epitome of this sort of consumption frenzy. And look, we all have sales. We all put our products on sale throughout the year. But Black Friday is millions of companies doing it all at the same time with this very short time frame, and we're basically asking the world to just go on this massive binge. So I think for brands that want to be blue, you know, you can't be a part of the solution while contributing to the problem that got us here in the first place. And I think this is a really tall order, right? To say to a blue brand, hey, please don't bake the last 2 months of the year as being like the holiday season that's going to make your year, right? The businesses that want to be blue, and again, it goes back to this is a business strategy, not a marketing strategy. You have to look at your P&L differently. You have to look at your forecasting differently. You know, it starts at the business level to really create a different projection so that you're not forced to contribute to the Black Friday madness. Blue brands at their core believe that the planet is a shareholder in their business. And you cannot rob a shareholder to pay another shareholder, right? So you cannot be a blue brand and say, I'm just gonna mindlessly participate in this massive consumption frenzy. So this is probably getting some people uncomfortable because they're like, oh, wait, you know, and I get it. This is the path, right? But we have to look at it with eyes wide open if we want to change the model and if we want to change our future. So a few ways that we could approach Black Friday and the holiday season a little differently. And there are wonderful case studies of brands that have done this and they have survived and thrived. First is you can choose to just go rogue. You can choose to not participate. And again, this goes back to don't bank on Black Friday as being any time that you're going to be making your year. REI is a great example of this. They just said, we're not processing sales on Black Friday. We want you to go be with your family. This is a huge company that is competing with Amazon, is competing with all of these other retailers, and is competing against the brands websites. And they said, no, we're not participating. We're not going to, we're down, we're closed for business today. And it built a tremendous amount of loyalty. So they are continuing to work with that model of this isn't our jam. The other thing that we could do is look at a small set of products that are responsibly made, that do have your highest integrity blue story, and market these only. Don't focus on any other products and just say, these are the ones, if you're going to consume today, please consume the things that are going to have the lowest impact on our environment, and get around that, get behind that in a major way. You can create a movement with your company and within your company to, instead of focusing on sales, focus on going out and doing some regenerative practice in your community, whether that's ocean cleanup or planting trees. Again, campaign for that. This may not be a huge sales day, but it will absolutely help to engender customer loyalty for that base who shares your values. We've seen brands that partner with environmental philanthropies and they create exclusive products. Everlane partnered with Oceana and created a bunch of products that were made out of recyclable bottles. That's what they promoted on Black Friday.
And they didn't put them on sale.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, they just said, again, if you're going to consume, please consume responsibly, And then I would say that, price slashing, I don't think we can compete anymore. I don't think brands can really compete anymore with price slashing. There's always going to be someone cheaper. You've always got the Amazons out there. So taking a different stance, if you want to participate in that day and that week, taking a different stance that aligns with your values, that's pro-environment, and that's really bold, I think is actually going to do way better for you as a brand in the long run. And I would say that Black Friday is a short-term gain, and there's no bottom line number that's greater than the negative impact that Black Friday has on the environment. So I think we just have to look at it with eyes wide open and choose a different path. And we love creating rebellious campaigns. So
I want to add to that, because I've been thinking about this a little bit in terms of direct to consumer versus retail, retail partner. And I would say there's one way that I have seen brands successfully get around Black Friday. And there's just a couple of them that I can cite, but those are the brands that never put their products on sale, ever.
Mm-hmm. Apple,
Mm-hmm.
Vintner's Daughter, Infiore.
Shinola is a great brand that I think really does that well, where it's never on sale. It's just the price that it is, and it's always the price that it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, one of the, Black Friday is just sort of a bigger version of what goes on all year, is actually what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. It's an amplification of, but it's really going on all the time right now. Mm-hmm. Particularly, I feel like it's gotten worse over the last year, probably.
It's going to be bad this year. Listen, everybody's predicting that no one's going shopping. No one's going to be waiting in these long lines to go get their, massive big screen TV. That's a very outdated, practice now, and certainly this year. So online retailers, should be planning for, that shoppers are going to be looking for online opportunities, right, to buy online. Mm-hmm. The challenge is, how can you be present for that? How can your brand be represented in the midst of all of this and still align with your values, and not just kind of turn a blind eye and go, well, I'm just going to totally, do this for 48 hours, but then I'll come back in line with my values. And it is not easy. It takes creativity, and it takes some guts. And Jeannie, you and I have talked about this a ton, and it's that, Amazon changed the game, and then I think that the game has been further just totally reimagined with the fact that there is no sort of loyalty anymore to channels. So people can find sales and deals anywhere. So if that's true, then why are we all as brands still scrambling to, on this sort of price slashing game? Let's find a smarter, newer way to grab consumers' attention in the midst of this holiday season and stay really true and authentic and aligned to your brand values.
Yeah. I think there might be a backlash. It's hard for me. Like, I feel like everything I predict, I maybe takes longer than I think it's going to take, or it doesn't actually play out that way. But I think there may be a backlash to Black Friday. And I think what's interesting to me is if consumers really rise to the occasion and say, we're not going to play this game.
So it's a great question. Is Black Friday consumer demand or corporate greed? I would argue that it was born of corporate greed. I don't think consumers said, we want our holiday sales, we created this monster. And that's why I think it is the company's responsibility to rewrite the holiday narrative and shape the consumer mindset. And I do think it's going to be our younger generations, our Gen Zs, our millennials, who get on board with it faster and who go, that's the brand that I'm loyal to.
Yeah, I think I predict that there's going to be a rise of brands who don't participate in sales. They just set their pricing and they maintain it. And those brands will become the brands that consumers will be more loyal to because they actually make a better product, because they invest more into their product, and it turns this cycle. I think it'll take a while, but.
You bring up a really important point, which is that, and this has been found in research, that the Gen Zs and the millennials and some of the younger Gen Xers, so basically 40, 20 to 40, are really redefining luxury to look at primarily quality, longevity, how durable, how resilient, how long something lasts. Now in the world of beauty, that is, the quality of the product, the quality of the component, the container, all of that you're, and then of course the efficacy, how something is, the potency, right? So when you look at how something is made and the potency of the material, that is what we're starting to really equate with luxury. It's not about brand names. It's not about labels. It's not about how expensive something is. It's not about where you buy it. It's not about all those social markers of success. It's really about the quality of the product. And going back up to sort of the blue business philosophy, the quality of the product is intrinsically connected to the ethical, planet-friendly process. So all of this says, blue is the new luxury.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's possible is that brands tell that story as their antidote to Black Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we also know that people will spend money on the things that they value and the things that they think are quality. And Apple is a great example. I mean, Apple's Apple, right? But they actually have record sales every Black Friday and they never put anything on sale. Mm-hmm. So how you position your brand is actually everything. I know this is all about how to craft the Blue Beauty story, right? And it's important that it all be rooted in your actual practices and in, the authenticity and the DNA of your brand. But there are some kind of tips and things that I have seen and worked through with our clients to help really communicate these blue tenets in a way that resonates. So I want to make sure that I hit those because I think that that's a very sort of tactical, applicable thing for the listeners. I think that we can go beyond recycling at this point. Mm-hmm. And talk about what aspects of the components in are recyclable? What is the actual DNA of the component? 54%.
Not just saying like the whole thing's recyclable. There's actually pieces. Break it apart. Break it down.
We're there. You know, we're there, and we need to tell them how to do it. I think that's the onus of the company. That's the responsibility of the company. I think that for something that doesn't have that isn't recyclable, we need to speak to that. We need to tell them what is the end of life cycle for this product. And if something has to go in a landfill, we need to talk about that. If you can put it in a, TerraCycle, bin, we can say that, like we need to give people instruction on the end of life cycle disposing options. If you can share how you're offsetting carbon emissions on the label, do it. People care. I think that there's a base of consumers that care. They want to see that you care. We are in a place right now where we're looking at alternatives to plastic, whether that's bioresin or ocean plastic. There's some really cool stuff that's happening with algae and with mycelium. If you're using that type of a material, let's do the homework and really be able to speak to some of those like calculations. Like for every product sold, this number of gallons is removed from the ocean. This many gallons of plastic is removed from the ocean. Very kind of like the Kevin Murphy example. Again, I think we should share where we still have to make progress and be really transparent with our consumers about that. I think that they respect that.
So some brand vulnerability.
What's that?
Some brand vulnerability.
Yeah, but it also tees us up for the celebration when you have found the way through it.
Yeah.
I think that other brands then, I mean, it's kind of like the Paris Agreement model, right? It's like if everybody's on board and on the same page with this, then we can all be vulnerable with each other and share where we're making strides and where we still need to go. But if nobody's willing to talk about it, then nobody's held accountable and nobody actually does anything.
Right.
So by putting it out there in front and center, you as a brand are being vulnerable but bold. You're being authentic and honest with your customer. And then you're kind of giving the message to other brands like, you better get on board and get honest because this is the new normal. I think it's real leadership. Regenerative practices, like that, if they're built into your model, like Osmia is a great example. They plant a tree for every product sold, or using recyclable water bottles to make certain products. I mean, these things have to be super front and center in your brand. And if you're not doing those things now, those are philanthropies that you can get engaged with to start, implementing regenerative practices into your business model. And then I guess the last thing I would just say is that I'm all for like quippy headlines and really smart kind of tongue-in-cheek marketing, but not when it comes to this. You can't be hyperbolic when it comes to this. You can't be cute and clever. Just state it. Just state it. And just being honest is actually really great marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People resonate with honesty. And certainly this is actually a very serious topic, in a sense that, we don't need to be somber about it, but it is a serious topic. So we can be direct.
Yeah.
I'm all about being direct. So. Well, thank you so much. You shared so much. I know that, if you watch this and you enjoyed hearing from Rachel, please share it because this recording will be available so that other people can learn from Rachel and what she had to offer here. So thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so grateful. And we're going to have many, 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 many more conversations.
Always. You're so awesome. Thank you so much. And Arena, thank you for creating this opportunity.
I love this conversation so much. and it was like what was so inspiring, and I think for many brands. And I think this talk today was some sort of like a summary for many of other talks we talk about Blue Beauty. Don't you think, Jenny? Yeah, and you touched so many great.
It tees up next week's conversation with Christopher really well. So I'm looking forward, if you're tuning in today, tune in next Thursday. And actually all of the conversations really do weave together beautifully. I feel like this series has been really inspiring and educational for me.
Yes, and for everybody else, I hear so many good feedback about the series, which is very well noticeable, and it's a good timing. I think it's the best timing. We live in an unprecedented time, and if anything we can do to help for our conscious and planet and people and planet, I think it's a very good things what you're doing, Jenny. So thank you very much for all this initiative of the Blue Beauty.
All right, everybody. Have
okay, so you already.
Sorry.
Yes, the video will come after a couple of hours.
See you next week.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.